Hello and welcome to the PhD Life Raft podcast. I'm Emma Brzezinski and today I am talking to the fabulous Bea Hughes. We're focusing on the issue of precarity, and Bea talks about their own experience going through the PhD process, which ended up with a viva on MS Teams. But they also talk about their work with the UCU, the University and College Union. So this episode might be of particular interest to you if you are negotiating sessional contracts or working as a teaching assistant in university in some way. So I do hope you enjoy this episode. Evening, Bea.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for coming on. And we met, we were both invited to speak at the Association for Art History, and your talk there was so inspirational and so impassioned, and I was like, I would just love, people will love to hear this. So thank you for saying yes to come and talk to people on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I thought that was a really just interesting and important panel. So it's great that we've got space to continue that conversation.
It was actually, and shout out to the Association for Art History for their postgraduate panel, because it was just, like you say, really important, gorgeously put together. And they do amazing work supporting postgraduates. And actually, we could put a link, couldn't we, in the show notes to the work that they're doing, because it is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the doctoral and early career researcher part of the AAH. So they do brilliant work.
Awesome. So here we are. We always start with asking people about their own journeys through the PhD. And I know that you have had an interesting one. So can you tell us about your own journey?
Yeah, okay. So I did my PhD part-time. I started back in 2014. It was a slightly, I had a bit of a stop-start kind of situation with my whole kind of PhD at multiple points. So even from the very beginning, I kind of, so I'd done my undergrad, I'd done my MRes, and I really wanted to keep working with my MRes supervisor, Professor Colin Fallows at Liverpool School of Art and Design. And the opportunity to potentially do a PhD with him came up, and kind of to develop my research. So I kind of really jumped on that. Though there was a bit of a strange, I guess, I'm trying to put this diplomatically. There was a slightly strange it was a strange time in the university, and there was a lot of tension between kind of a very informal arrangement of how funding would be allocated for postgrad. So I was fortunate that I was like applying to it in the knowledge that I'd probably be getting my fees funded.
Right.
But as soon as I kind of was going through the application process, I was offered a place, but then there was like a bit of pressure from certain parties to give me supervisors that I didn't want to work with. So that was my first kind of big lesson and kind of really important thing about kind of taking control of my own research and my own PhD journey. Yes. And I actually ended up declining my place that I'd already accepted.
Wow.
And reapplying to a competitive fees scholarship in a different school in the university. So my PhD ended up in the media communication culture department in the School of Humanities and Social Science, not in the art school, but still with Colin on my team. So that was a bit of a gamble, but fortunately I got accepted. I got the fees funding.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was good. So that was my first one. Kind of point where I was like, hang on a minute. Someone is telling me, oh no, it's fine. We can make your research fit in the school. You can kind of but we want you to have these supervisors. And it wasn't that I didn't kind of like or respect those people. It's just that I knew that the research I wanted to do at that point wouldn't kind of be able to happen in the way I wanted it to unless I had the supervisors that I'd already kind of identified. And it's your right to have a say in who supervises you as a PGR.
And I want to just totally honour that, because this is unusual in all the best ways, in terms of people often, as you say, feel that they have to just take what's offered to them. They feel like if somebody's letting them do a PhD, that's amazing. It's like, well, no, you're bringing all sorts of skills and opportunities to the institution, and you absolutely have a right to be part of that decision making about who will supervise you. Absolutely. And so, what a fantastic example in your story.
Thanks, Emma. So it worked out well, and I had the backing of Colin Fallows, and also who would become my director of studies, Dr. Sean Lincoln, over in the School of Humanities and Social Science. And kind of I had another supervisor who, because of the way my project changed over time, kind of I changed my supervisors. I got another supervisor from the media department, Dr. Ned Hassan. And that team was just like 100% behind me through the kind of rest of it. So I started working on this project. My kind of background is in graphic arts. My degree was in graphic arts illustration specialism. For my master's, I did an MRes art and design, and I researched the visual culture of Dracula, which, you're going to get a sense of kind of taken quite a long time to figure out what I was doing in terms of kind of research.
Love that.
So I did that project. It was kind of practice led, but it was quite a heavy kind of theoretical question. And I was kind of wondering why people were not having these theoretical discussions about illustration, whereas they kind of, you at least have some sort of theoretical framework or tradition, something to kind of look or anchor into or push against in other kind of arts-based disciplines. So that became the basis of the project that I started and was supported to do. I realized after about 18 months that I was kind of doing this project that wasn't bringing me any fulfillment anymore. I really started out wanting to find this out. So I designed this kind of basically an ethnographic study of the kind of landscape of illustration as a profession, as an industry, as a kind of site of education and kind of practice. But it was really difficult as someone like so kind of new to the field to have those conversations. Right. And to, people would be kind of acknowledging in interviews that I did early on, oh yeah, like this isn't great, there's like lots of problems, but also kind of not wanting to be on the record with these kinds of things. And it just like I wasn't doing any creative practice. It was really really not working. And I was really struggling at that point. We were struggling with kind of work alongside. So throughout my PhD, I worked as a sessional lecturer in kind of various departments. And I had kind of, that comes with its own ebbs and flows, like work being offered or not, kind of trying to scrabble around to find more work in another department. Yes. And I was kind of at this point where I almost felt like I wanted to quit my PhD. Right. Or at least take like a leave of absence, figure out what I was doing. And my supervisors just said, you can have a leave of absence, but also you can just take the time and not worry about it to like figure out what you're doing and what you want to do. And that's what I did. So I kind of, even though I was kind of still on the clock, as it were, I suddenly didn't have a project because the one that had been approved was like not working, and I couldn't find the kind of motivation to kind of unpick it all. And they would just go, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. I'm scared and depressed now. But throughout that kind of, it took about a year actually. And this is the kind of, I guess, the benefit of a number of kind of factors, like doing it part-time, and I had space to have, to do those things, to have those thoughts. If I'd have done my PhD full-time, I would have probably ended up quitting, because I wouldn't, I could not have done what I've done in the time I've had.
And this theme has come up a lot in terms of, there are lots of problems of doing a part-time PhD, but there are also benefits. And that is that having that time is a real benefit. And I know that this experience that you've had will resonate with lots of people in terms of getting to that point of kind of, this is just not working. What do I do? And taking a pause. I mean, how amazing are your team in terms of saying to you to do that, take that time, you'll get there, you'll find it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the kind of trust that my supervisor had in me throughout was, it was the thing that kept me going. And the faith that they knew that I kind of had the skills as a researcher, and that I had, their support to do that exploration.
Yes.
Was, so important. And I know that I'm really fortunate. Well, everyone should have that.
Well, exactly.
And it does.
And just to reflect back to you, you crafted that for yourself. You put that in place for yourself. And how fantastic is that?
Yeah. I am acutely aware that so many people feel, or are made to feel, somehow inadequate, or somehow that they should be, grateful for, the whatever is offered, that it's really difficult to find kind of the space for yourself, kind of in terms of your own kind of well-being, your own kind of breathing and thinking space, and to know that you're supported to make those decisions. Against all those potential institutional structures that are kind of going to push back against that.
Yes. So you took your time, you worked it through, and
I started my new project.
Yay!
Which kind of emerged from, during this whole time of turmoil. I'd started I was participating in a creative collaborative project with Colin, my supervisor, as part of his research, which was or is, still exists, but I don't participate anymore. But it's a sound art ensemble called Colin Fallow's Ensemble, and this gave me like a really solid basis in getting back into creative practice. I started to learn new skills. I was doing loads of performance. We kind of had this like 18 months of rehearsal of kind of like unlearning how the conventions of playing electric guitar are kind of brought to us through culture, and kind of trying to reorient that towards like thinking about sound as a spatial thing and as a kind of physical thing, and relating it to kind of visual arts. And that enabled me to kind of figure out that I wanted to be making my own work, and I didn't work. And then that's where my project came from.
Love that. And again, this theme has come up before as we talk to people in terms of those kind of seemingly peripheral things that you're engaged in. They can be magical in terms of that's then where the direction goes. That's where the energy comes from. That's where you're drawn to. And I love this in your story, that sense of your creative practice coming through and then leading the way.
And I just also it was slightly complicated by not being in the art department anymore.
Right.
I was also really, really strongly supported to do a practice-led PhD in the media cultural studies department that doesn't traditionally have practice-led PhDs. So yeah, that was cool, and I hope other people get to do that as well.
Yes, exactly. I think it's kind of challenging those disciplinary traditions, I guess, isn't it? It is about tradition often, and just changing it up, just encouraging people to think differently around subject matter, and that ideally that's what PhD work is. It's cutting edge work. That's what That's what it should be doing, if there is a should about it. So I know that when you got to the viva, it was still an interesting process for you.
Yeah, it was. So I submitted my thesis on, I think it was like the 5th of March 2020, and we all know what happened right
Remember that date, everybody?
Because we're still in the middle of it all. So I'd submitted my thesis and was waiting for my viva arrangements while the whole world and all of our universities were trying to figure out how on earth they function off campus and online. So I had my viva via Microsoft Teams.
And how was that?
It was, I had so many mixed emotions about that process.
Yes.
Because I was there's so much about doing a PhD and the whole process of it, and it all leads up to the viva.
Yeah.
And it, you can go to like viva survivor training and all these, other various things. There's so many resources, there's so many like ideas about how you're going to handle a viva. But that's, our university has a special room that you go to in the doctoral academy. Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I'm kind of glad I didn't have to go to the room, because
the room
weird to me. Yeah, we have a viva room, but I'll never, unless I get to examine a PhD, I guess I'm not going to go in there.
Oh my goodness.
And there's that whole build-up where you think you're going to go to your viva, and then you're going to get to see supervisors afterwards, and you're going to get to see friends and your family potentially, depending on where you are. And none of that was going to happen, and I was so sad about that. Amongst all of the turmoil of like being confused about having to do it on Teams, and like also just like stress of it being a viva.
Yes.
But it was also nice in some ways, because I ended up, because of having to do it from home, doing my viva in the room where I'd made a lot of the artwork that ended up in my thesis. So that was kind of nice. It was like, this is the room where I figured out what I wanted to do in my practice, where I'd started the kind of pivotal project that formed, the whole thesis in the end. And I got to sit in this room and do my viva here. It all went fine. It was fine.
That's something really gorgeous about that, isn't there? In terms of being in your own space. I was just asking more about that because I know there will be other people out there right now getting ready to do their viva on Teams, and just wishing you all luck. And
yeah, absolutely. I think hopefully people also might feel a little bit more comfortable in kind of the world of online video calling.
No, exactly, because you were just thrown into it.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little, but I had been fortunate in that I'd been like engaged in some kind of union related stuff since kind of right when lockdown was called. That meant that I got a little bit used to being on Teams and being in online meetings. So it wasn't like 100% new. So obviously doing a viva was 100% new.
So let's get on to the union related stuff, because you do a lot of fantastic work with the union, and the theme of precarity and PhD students was something that that's where I met you talking about that, and also is really important, and something you work with the union on. So can you tell us a little bit about that work?
Yeah, so I'm chair of my branch of UCU, and I have been for just over a year now. Before that, I've been a member since 2012 throughout the whole kind of working as a sessional lecturer alongside doing my research, and kind of got involved more in the branch in the last kind of couple of years. I kind of reached a point where the kind of situation with kind of the precarity of my employment had become so frustrating, in that there were so many changes to the types of contract that could be given to me because I was a PGR, even though, I'd previously held a different type of contract and it was no problem. Or, the amount of hours that could be allocated, that I kind of just thought, right, I need to find some support. I need to get involved with the union. So the union that we're talking about is UCU, the University and Colleges Union, just in case people aren't familiar, and also don't know that PGRs can be members of UCU. And UCU has so many resources, networks, and kind of specific regional, local, and national officers that are elected to kind of build work around this.
Yes, and you can be a free member, is that right, of the UCU if you're a PGR?
You can. So if you're a PhD candidate who doesn't teach alongside or do any kind of contracted work separate to your PhD, it doesn't have to be teaching, it can be, research assistantship or whatever, then you can join as a student member. So if you are a candidate but you don't do any work, if you have any kind of employment in the university, then you can join UCU if you're kind of doing any kind of teaching or research related job. If you're kind of working in a different department where UCU don't represent that constituency of members, then you might need to join a different union, but you can still join a union in your workplace.
And we recommend joining the union.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it can seem like quite daunting, because especially if you're a PGR, you can already feel quite alienated and disconnected from the rest of the academic community in loads of different ways. And I think also unions in general can seem a little bit unapproachable. Not always, and there are so many branches of UCU doing amazing work, kind of building and organising with their members. But if you kind of haven't dipped your toe into that world before, it can be quite intimidating. But
as you say, there's so much support for you there, and as you were saying, particularly for PGRs, it might be that they come in because they are involved in sessional work or they've got a short-term contract, and actually, as you were saying, it can help people to understand what that means, understand their rights in terms of those contracts.
Absolutely. And to also understand that you're not alone in the way that you're being employed, and that this is actually one of the biggest systemic problems in academia at the moment. So, the choice to make people employed on these contracts that push us to the side and now kind of make us feel that we're not as good as other members of staff is a choice that employers have made. It's not a inherent part of academia. It doesn't have to be. And there are kind of reports from UCU and campaigns that you can get involved in. UCU commissioned research about how casualisation and precarity impact people. So their report from 2020, which is really, really detailed, is actually called Second-Class Academic Citizens, the Dehumanising Effects of Casualisation in Higher Education. And I think you can see just how kind of awful and how seriously the union takes it. That's how the union has put out a report that recognises exactly how it makes people feel to be treated like this.
Yes, and as you say, people might feel like it goes back to what we were saying before in terms of people feeling that they should be grateful for something that's been offered. They feel like they have to go along with what's happening, and actually seeing that there are other people in the situation, seeing that they're supported in that situation may help it to initially feel different, but hopefully actually change that situation. That's what's being moved towards. And we can certainly put links to that report in the show notes and other links to UCU and how people can join up there. So I'm going to ask you now a really unfair question, which I ask everybody, is about a kind of top tip or something for people to take away from this conversation that's touched on so many things. Any offers for us, B?
Okay, so I think one of the kind of, I guess it's two things that link. So from earlier in the conversation, when we were talking about, you should feel that you have control and agency over your project, and
Yes.
over your over the direction of your research, and over things like your supervisory team. And if you feel that your supervisory team isn't working, you have a right to change it, for example, and to request for that to be changed. So that's the first thing. To
Yes.
kind of don't feel that you have to be pulled along some sort of institutional journey. Yes, there are regulations. Obviously, it's a qualification.
Yes.
But you also should feel that you are in control of what you're doing.
Yes.
Yes. And then the second thing, I guess, is to do with the latter part of our conversation, and that's around the way that being a PGR in an institution where often we feel like we're not staff and we're not students, because the structures that support students are often so geared towards undergrads, and often institutions will refuse to speak to unions about things that concern PGR specifically because that's student related. But also UCU I should have said this earlier, UCU are mounting a campaign to have PGRs recognised as staff in UK higher education. So
Fantastic.
That's something to keep an eye on. So the other thing I'd say is just don't feel that you are to blame or that you're inadequate, and don't feel that you're alone in that. Try and kind of, if you're already a member of the union, kind of just reach out to the branch. You can do that via the UC website. It will give you branch contact. If you're already a member, if you're not a member, join. You'll get put in touch. If you want to get involved, you can self-organize. You can get together, with the people in your lab or the people in your department. If you've got a couple of people that you know at your uni, and go to the branch and say, we really want to do some work around, PGRs and casualised contracts. Is the branch doing anything? Who else is interested? What support can you give us? And most people will just bite your hand off, and they will support you to do that and to kind of advocate for yourselves.
Yes. Well, got very much value for money there, didn't we? Because we've got 3. Fantastic. Thank you so much, B, for all of that advice. Really, really useful stuff. And as I say, we'll have all the links in the show notes. And also, every week you can sign up to get notes from the Life Raft, so that we send extra bits of information on that weekly newsletter. So you can sign up for that too. Thank you again, B, for your time and your generosity of spirit and all the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Emma. Thanks for creating this podcast in this space, bringing people together to talk about what can be quite a complicated and varied journey for people.
Yeah. And thank you all for listening.